Hello Montana, I'm Daniel Larson and I'm running for U.S. Senate. Trying to go around and capture what Montana voters truly care about so I can represent them when I get to the United States Senate. The theme of my campaign is STOP, which stands for See the Other Perspective. I want to do this campaign different. I want it to stay small. I want it to be focused on who I am as a person. If you have anything you're concerned about, reach out. Let's have a conversation. I'm planning on changing the world June 2nd, but in order to get there, I need some help. So I've been having some conversations with my friends, and what you're about to watch is my friend Marty.
So do you understand what a value-added tax is?
I have read up on value-added tax. At the moment, I don't remember what I read. I think my age is creeping up on me.
Yeah, so what it is it's a consumption tax.
Yes.
So it functions similar to like a sales tax, but so it's popular. There's several European models for it. They have it, as high as like 20-some%. But I'd be proposing it at 10%, which would be on a broad base of goods. It would exempt small business transactions. It would exempt like consumer staples, but it would be applied also inbound on goods coming in from other countries. So it would be a new leg in our tax policy that would take the burden off of income taxes.
So you would recommend not having income taxes and having a VAT tax?
I think you would have to migrate away from income taxes. Like, I think it would be way too much to say me as one U.S. Senator could get rid of income taxes, because income taxes are paying for the federal government right now. Mm-hmm. Corporate taxes are a very small percentage. It's pretty much all revenue streams are just, like the Social Security taxes and then income tax revenue.
And Social Security isn't supposed to be funding any part of the government.
Yeah, it's not. But so when you look at the national deficit, the Social Security is actually, we've borrowed from Social Security to pay our national debt. So our national debt is owned by foreign countries, but Social Security Trust Fund is actually the majority of what we owe to. So as a person, you are currently, what, 72? 72? So you'll probably make it through. Yeah.
Paid into Social Security all my life.
Yeah.
And if I'd taken that and just put it into a minimal, something that would grow a little bit, I'd be much better off. Semi-retired. I have to work a little bit.
You have to work a little bit. She has to work a little bit. You're responsible for your own stuff. Could you see how were you guys working together and focusing on, what you want to focus on with another $1,000 each? Might be good for you.
I wouldn't be working now.
But you would be. Okay, so if you say tomorrow you guys both had $1,000 each per month, the types of things I'm guessing that you'd be doing is helping out raising grandkids, supporting family members, stuff like that, right? Or maybe it's time. That your daughter's $1,000 would help, take care of you guys, or you know what I mean. But
it would be a little bit different lifestyle.
Yeah,
but not a lot.
So you wouldn't buy a Lamborghini or anything.
I think at our age, there were things I wanted. Mm-hmm. Now there's not that much I want.
Yeah, you just want a running vehicle, food in your belly.
Yeah.
Maybe
a new motorcycle.
A new motorcycle,
but
a hobby. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm not unhappy.
But do you think the world would be better off if you and your wife were with all of your wisdom and resource and time? Don't you think that you would be contributing to society, like still in a very healthy way?
I would like to think we would. I mean, $2,000 a month is That's not chicken feed. That's a fair amount of money.
Substantial base.
Yeah. I mean, that's boy, you could do. Yeah, a person could live on $1,000 a month if they're frugal.
Yeah, they could. Yeah. Well, what if I could?
What does that do to our working society, though? Doesn't it make? Don't you feel that you would have a whole group of people that just would go, cool, I don't have to work.
Yeah, you definitely don't want dependence on the government to be fostered. I think generally people want to contribute. Don't you think?
I would say in the
$12,000 is not enough to live on.
no, but
You're not gonna have a very good life.
no, but you could do it.
You could do it.
You aren't going to be living under a bridge somewhere.
Yeah, but if people wanted to create their own little communist community somewhere or something like that, and share resources, or 5 people get together to purchase a house or something like that, I think that it frees up. I think it frees up untapped mental capacity. That would be my hope and belief. The curve for happiness goes like this. So money actually buys you happiness, right? But it is a diminishing return. So it starts off like this. It climbs really steep until you get about $70,000, and then its curve just goes up like gradually, So it's there is this correlation that you have a huge value of kind of happiness creation. Like if you're taking somebody out of poverty, you're actually increasing their functional IQ. You're helping people be smarter. There's research that says if we just feed our children a little bit different in nutrients, like they could have 15 IQ points for the rest of their life. It's like we could start doing these things that would really make long-term effects. But okay, so we take the floor out. But then this whole model of people that are making, $70,000 plus, they're already content with their stuff. Now that money they can use to, it's discretionary income to improve the world they see, And so it would be a huge boom to churches. It would be a huge boom to civic organizations. There might be a lot more club-based activities, a lot more, just interest in your civic life, and less just surviving. That's the way I see it.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because
I know we can't. I know that it is unrealistic to. You can't have free this. You can't have free that. Everything can't be free, and the government can't pay for it all. The government doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
Well,
but
to begin with.
The beauty of this is that you're saying that the government is only good at writing checks and collecting taxes, right? So, if you have a tax structure that allows it to be tailored to target, to effectively regulate the economy, and then no administrative costs. It's just whatever it costs. Maybe you could be the printer on this, but whatever it costs to send the checks out. And now it's digital. So, and then you're allowing the people the freedom to actually attack the change that they want to see.
The government doesn't do anything well. The government
they collect taxes and they write checks. That's what I'm saying.
But
you want to hear an interesting analogy?
Sure.
This is home prices and national debt, right? So, imagine you're making $60,000 a year, right?
Not a bad income, not great.
Not a bad income. So that's the equivalent of the $3 and some change trillion that the federal government takes in, right? So imagine this, right? So our we have a home value of about $370,000, right? That would be the equivalent of our GDP, right? But we owe $390,000, right? So that's our current scenario. It's we're making $60,000 a year. We're spending about $85,000 a year. Our home value is 370, and we owe 390. And that, when you think about that from the federal, budget perspective, it's it gets scary, because I think we've all been there. We all went through the financial crisis. That's an important scenario. My proposal would actually take their home value up to $412,000. So would be bigger than what we owe on it. So. No? You sold on universal basic income value added tax?
What scares me about a new tax and value added or any new taxes, okay, it's going to be 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And that goes along for a while, and then all of a sudden it's going to be more money. Right? It's going to be 15%.
Yeah.
No, it's going to be 20%. And you start going, well,
I think
now I can't afford to buy anything.
I think you need to pay attention to the word tailored. The way I say tailored. Tailored. Exempting consumer staples. Exempting small business.
I caught that. Because so if I'm just living basic, I'm not paying much on the value added because I'm not buying any.
What you get is $1,000 a month, and what you're paying is like nothing. But every once in a while, when you go to Amazon now has to, that transaction is going to be 10% bigger. But that incentivizes your behavior into your local economy, that's climate change right there, man.
So when I buy a car, I've got my car is going to cost me 10% more.
What I would say is you'd probably look at a model from need, like a needs-based model. So cars under a certain value, you could change the value added tax. And cars of a certain like fuel mileage, like say a high fuel mileage car that costs less than $20,000, maybe the value added tax is like 2 or 3%. But like a Lamborghini is like a 22%. You know what I mean?
So
you could actually put it on the products.
It hits the rich more than it hits them.
It affects the people that can afford to pay it in real ways. But what it is you would actually target like industries that are like truck driving, for example. So every robot truck mile should have a value added tax, like a little haircut, attached to it. Because what you're doing is you're actually taking the existing economic model, you're replacing the human, which is of value, like it's a budget line that's going away, so you're actually standing to make a little bit more money. And if we do this before this happens, what you're doing is you're actually making the cost of transportation, like per truck mile, less. So you would never notice the effect. The cost per truck mile on like all your groceries and stuff like that would actually go down. But the government has taken a piece back because we've displaced, an economic unit, which would be one truck driver, right?
Interesting.
Yeah, so you could actually, if you could tailor it so it actually has a very low consumer impact, but a high kind of economic value. You know what I mean? Anyway, just sign on for more taxes. We'll call it a tax all day long. We're not going to do the, what's her name? We're not going to do the Elizabeth Warren where we just say, there's no taxes involved. Right. Your costs are going down. It's like, it is a tax, but let's think about how we tax people. And now we would have a leg in tax policy that we could go away from income taxes. Because the income tax burden in the U.S. is unsustainable.
Well, it's a tax with a benefit.
Yeah.
Which most taxes,
that's why when you partner it, that's the beauty. Yeah. If I were to just say, hey, you know what, we should run $2.8 worth of deficit spending to give everybody UBI. Yeah, that's stupid, right? But if you say, hey, we're going to take what the government does well and tax people, and what the government does well is sending checks, and we're going to partner them up, and we're going to solve all these other baseline issues in a very real, sustainable way, but we're actually promoting individual accountability for solving some of these other problems, Like, I think it's the base floor so you can negotiate with your employer. It's the, base floor that, like, people in your generation are financing the lives of people in my generation, and even younger. So there's a huge spike in consumer debt, and that is people in your generation paying for college of people of like Tanya's age, like my daughter's age. And so your generation still has a lot of sort of comparative net worth, but like net worth just isn't rising like for for us.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And you've probably noticed that you've had to help out people a couple times, but certainly the burden should be within, for fixing some of these problems, should be within our family structures. And I think that if we all had $1,000 a month, every time people work together, there's a kind of this immense value creation, you know? Like if you have multi-generational households, that would be huge, you know? So when they did the studies, because they were going to introduce universal basic income, I think in the Nixon administration, and then it failed in the Senate because they wanted it to be larger, right? So it nearly passed.
So they wanted it to be a living income. Yeah, you can have a house and you can have a car.
Yeah, so it was like a few $100 baseline, and then it ended up failing because they wanted it to be larger. And then there's like the $2,000 that people in Alaska get, you know, from the oil dividend.
Yeah, they get money just for living there.
Yeah, but
And
the studies in the
I don't
19th
blame it, because that's a tough place to live.
Well, yeah, the studies in the 1960s, though, there was a flaw in the data. And so originally people got scared because they saw what they thought was divorce rates climbing, right? And so I think that it was a particularly sort of misogynist, you know, government or viewpoint back then, thinking that, oh no, we can't do this because then all of our wives would leave us. But it turns out that was just a fluke. It most likely was just a fluke in how it reported the data, and that it likely will not increase the rates of
So
divorce.
it just proved that you can skew data.
Well, it proves that people have an emotional response to certain things when they see it in a data set. You know, like when guys see that divorce rates are going to climb if their wife has access to like a consistent monthly resource that's independent of them, they get a little bit scared.
I don't need you anymore.
Yeah, but I would say that would open up specifically, like especially in bad marriages and you know, instances of abuse and things like that. I think that would be liberating.
Yeah.
For everybody that's trapped in those scenarios.
Yeah. There are people that aren't nice to people.
Yeah. There's definitely dudes out there that are running a pretty rough show for women.
Yeah.
And then I think they try to use that financial lordship, you know, in those interactions to as a method of control. I think in families too, like. If there's a rich dad, he's trying to, you know, control his kids with his money, or grandfathers or aunts and uncles. I don't know. But did you know?
So the value. So your motto would be the value-added tax would pay for the living income.
Yeah. So the what I'm proposing with UBI would actually cost $2.8 trillion. Which is a lot of money.
That's it.
The value-added tax covers about half of that. You could pay for $900 and increase the value-added tax to 22%, but and then have it be cost neutral. But my argument would be, so right now we're running at like a $1 trillion deficit. I think the 2022 budget could actually have a $1.1 trillion deficit, implement the universal basic income at a 10% value-added tax, and then now we have a tailored value-added tax that we can start to target revenues with, and really look at the offset gains in future budgeting cycles to try to really limit the role of government over time. But you need a base floor to sort of come in and take up the slack of where you're going to be pulling out these, like if you pulled out welfare, if you pulled out, I think you could pull out unemployment insurance. I think you could pull out, disability benefits, most of it, because it would be opt-in. If you're on disability or some other cash payment, you would opt into UBI. Right? And if you already have a government assistance that's above that 1,000, you might choose to not take the UBI and stay on your existing level of assistance. But I think over time you would see a lot of people would just choose the UBI, try to, go get a part-time job, or, you know what I mean? Like if you already had $1,000 base floor, that next $500, is important, but now we're disincentivizing your first $500. Does that make sense? So why get a part-time job if that's going to disqualify me for a benefit that's equal? So
Well, that's what happened with welfare.
yeah.
Welfare paid me enough to kind of survive, and if I got a job, I lost it, but I can't get a job that gives me the money that welfare gave me.
You were on welfare?
No, I was.
Oh, no. This is
But
the
that
hypothetical.
The hypothetical
Sure.
was, people would go, well, why should I get off welfare?
Right. Well, and there's that disincentive for, so like if the majority of our jobs are service jobs, retail, different things like that, like low wage earning jobs, and the
Entry level jobs.
and $9 and $10 an hour type stuff, your full time employment's only worth $20,000 a year, right? Like at $10 an hour. And
Not a lot.
those checks are just not big enough to that first $1,000 hurdle. I mean, that's almost full-time income at those levels. So, because full time income at 10 is what, $1,200 a month, right?
Yeah, something like that. I guess I didn't. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not, but it's.
Well, it should
but
be
it's
1,600, but
it's
net
never-
it's
it
about
was-
1,200.
Yeah, it was never supposed to be. Minimum wage is supposed to be this year entry level.
Yeah.
The sad thing is there aren't as many. I don't know if it's not knowing the data, how many jobs there are out there for skilled laborers, and we don't have the skilled laborers
Yeah.
because we've taken the trades out.
Well, if you look at construction is actually a pretty risky business to get into, like as a laborer. Like I remember when I joined the workforce, I did pick up construction jobs, but they were intermittent. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you'd be hired as help for this project. Once the project's over, time to pound the pavement again. And maybe that guy's going to call you the next time he has a project, but it's really, you show up for a couple weeks, stuff like that. And I think UBI being a floor for like people that would help people that are actually creating value by building things, but can't afford to stay in the industry. Like I love working with my hands, and I wish that I would have built homes for a living, just because like it's therapeutic, right?
Yes.
But I couldn't do it because at some point you have to like, make stable income and all this other stuff. And I suppose if I found the right crew and the right, contractor and the right, then it would have worked.
Even with all that, when you have a recession and all of a sudden the housing market falls,
Right.
They aren't building houses because nobody's buying houses, and
Yeah, they're
we've all
selling their
seen those.
vans and their tools to survive a recession, and it's like this on-demand labor force that,
And
like,
that's sad.
yeah.
Yeah.
But I also think farm work is therapeutic. Like I would, if I had the ability to know, like, and I think healthcare is a different issue, but the ability to know that I had healthcare benefits provided to my family, but like say me and my wife were both making universal basic income and it was a $24,000 floor, I would probably choose to do farm work for $25,000 to $30,000 a year, if I could make it. But like to me, I find that kind of exciting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just different way of life. But it definitely, my generation doesn't really have the resources to be purchasing new farms. You know what I mean?
Farms are not. You don't have the little farms anymore.
Yeah, you have big corporate farms, and then you have sort of the price competitiveness with people that are doing ranchettes and large sort of vanity real estate. So like now you can't even approach this stuff at reasonable cost levels.
Yeah.
Like there's no way to pencil it in where you can operate. Because just the debt involved. I mean, you would just be a debt slave for the rest of your life.
Yeah. It's kind of sad.
It is sad because they're creating value. They're putting food in our stomachs.
Yeah.
you know, the arable land needs to be worked in this way. Like, we've got to feed people, you know, the food supply matters, you know?
You think?
Yeah.
I'm not going to step into this one, but I'm going to step into it anyway, I guess.
Okay.
The climate change.
Yeah.
I've listened to some scientists say the only reason we're really worried about climate change is because there's this group of people that go, I've got a job as long as we say the climate's going to.
Yeah, you could argue the contrary too, that the only people that are saying there isn't contrary or climate change is because they've got a job that involves them conducting their business in a model that has no climate change.
I've heard scientists go, you know, part of this is is being boosted by the government saying there's all this climate change, and the scientists that are saying it are paid by the government. And they go, well,
Yeah,
if I say it's gone, I lose my job and I lose my cushion.
Sure.
And I believe, yeah, there are things we need to do.
Well, the first thing is the federal government the correct repository of facts if they don't agree on facts? And the problem is money in politics, right? That has led us to a state where we can no longer agree on facts. And that's a problem.
Yeah.
Because the federal government has all of these facts, right? And they're supposed to be the most reliable source that we have for this data. Right?
But there are people that have come out and gone,
But there is a correct model for what constitutes, you know, evidence-based science, right? And that is when you cite your source, share your data, right? And I think that there is enough people now that are collecting information that the reasonable conclusions are that there is some effect of CO2 levels. That's what I think. But everybody can look at the same data and have a different sort of outcome. But when you get, it's kind of like I trust astrophysicists because they're more impartial, you know, and they're looking at like, oh, okay, well, how does this gas interact with that gas and stuff like that. And certainly when you look at the composition of other like celestial bodies, like CO2 composition does affect temperature, you know, so I don't know. You know, you can test these things in small experiments if you want, you know, but
I don't believe a grade school kid coming out and going, we're all going to die in 7 years.
Yeah, so the thing is...
and you give her the Peace Prize because she said it. I'm going, is that what we're going for now?
Are you kidding? She's an inspiration. You're talking about Thunberg, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so this exaggerated sort of world-ending climate conversation is... I understand the resistance, right? But there's a need for action to demonstrate that we can act, right? So it's going to affect human migration. It's going to affect food supply, right? These are two things we're not good at adjusting to. And so we have to start demonstrating our capacity to adjust to it. Like I was telling you last time, like what happens when the 70 million people in Mexico need to leave? Or, you know what I mean? Canada all of a sudden is frozen. Are we going to just accept them? You know, what's the plan? Are we building new cities? You know? Are we building new cities?
We are building some new cities, and they're very green. They're very...
Mm-hmm.
Here's a city. It's self-sufficient. You work in this city. You survive in this city. You can get anywhere in this city without a gasoline car.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I would
look
say
at
is,
that and I go, that's kind of cool.
here's what I would say. So there's within the climate change spectrum, that is only telling you where to work, right? So, but there's already like good economic cases for some of these actions, like public transport would be one, right? So when I used to work in Missoula, I would be spending $280 or so on gas, just going back and forth. So if there was a bus that took people back and forth down the Bitterroot. Theoretically, out of the 30,000 travelers a day, say like 15,000 of them are now able to go to a public transport model. And potentially they would have productive time. Like say it was just a rail car that ran the track that already exists. They would have productive time. They could check their email, do their work, all this other stuff. They wouldn't be spending the money on gas.
Yeah.
So even if
Cleaner.
even if now it cost them $100, like the economic value is $180 times 15,000 people per month. Like, and that is the role of the government, is to look at these things that have this huge impact and implement them. And so at some point, I don't know why, but we started burning all of our trolley cars. There's some theories out there about why that might have happened, right?
Yeah.
But you could say that in the early 1900s, we were better off from as far as the route that we were going towards public transportation.
Yes.
And I think everybody that's been in a gridlocked California freeway, everybody that's been in a Seattle freeway, everybody, these are not...
California, LA area had one of the best little transit systems around, the little red car, and they worked great, get on, get off. It was a wonderful thing. And they took it away.
Yeah, and we were talking about electric cars. Like, at some point, like, we need public transportation because, like, a gasoline car, probably you could say has a realistic case to be one car in your driveway is probably okay, for long-range transport, intermittent transportation. But public options for, 98% of people in the U.S. is possible. You know what I mean? Like, it's like we don't really live, that remotely. A couple of us do. But we live in cities, and we can just connect cities to cities, and it should be all right.
Probably, you put it that way.
And Missoula has free transportation, and I'm like, why don't I live in Missoula? Because I don't want to live in Missoula. But I would like to have.
You don't want to live in the hustle bustle city.
But I would like to have a train ride in.
And you don't want to pay the taxes that Missoula charges.
Yeah, the Missoula property taxes are crazy, and I know I can't affect it at the federal level, but maybe with my model of a value-added tax, states and local governments would understand that attaching them to the value-added tax model and getting away from property taxes is far more in the spirit of where we should be. Because property taxes are, I think they're unethical. Well, when you're trying to fund an entire government from the population, and this is not rich people, and you bought your home at one price, and great that it's worth so much now, but tax me when I sell it. Don't tax me every single year,
Well,
I understand there's public infrastructure.
California had Prop 13
Mm-hmm.
in the 70s. And it was, okay, you buy that house, you're paying this much tax on it.
Yeah.
You pay that much tax until you sell it.
Right.
When you sell it, the new buyer buys it at whatever price he pays, and the property tax at that point is at that sales price.
Sales price. So
And
it's
it
only ever
continues-
sales price. Yeah.
And then it continues on until he sells it to the next person.
Yeah.
It kept a lot of people in houses.
Right.
Now they're trying to repeal it.
See, that's terrible. That's
And
terrible.
they're going, we need, I don't know how many millions or billions of dollars they need for the school system in California, which is falling apart, and the worst school system in the country, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But they want to repeal 13.
Yeah.
And you talk about something happening in Mexico where people are leaving. If they do that to California,
Well, that's
You're
because
gonna
California
have a-
kicks a lot of people out of the state with
You're
the
gonna
way
have
it
a-
operates. Yeah.
you're going to have a mass migration and going, I can't afford to live here anymore. My property
Yeah,
taxes are
California
just
is crazy. I think my
tripled.
brother is paying $4,000 a month. $4,000 a month.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That's insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. That cost of living is just I can't fathom it.
The gasoline's $4 something a gallon.
Yeah, and everything you do.
Three highs.
Yeah. So I don't want to see people from and this is my call for nativism, right? Because people from California and New York that have already made this like decision to like live this way that is so crazy to me. Like I have a hard time like believing their judgment is correct. You know what I mean? Like you know, I understand you want to work in Silicon Valley, but doesn't everybody like remote work now? Like, can't you live anywhere you want? I don't know. So
I am from the land of fruits and nuts, but I did not bring that way of life with me.
Yeah, my mother's family actually moved from Ohio to California in the early 1960s, I think, and then. But that was a different time.
It was a wonderful place to grow up.
It was like the heyday of California.
And they've ruined it. So.
And then they came up here as the Californians. They bought a dude ranch out in Potomac, and nearly froze to death. Lost whatever money they brought up here. So, you know, and then they so that was up Gold Creek out of Potomac. So. They tell the story of walking around with a real estate agent or going around with a real estate agent at that time in the late 60s. They could have bought Wild Horse Island in the Flathead. They could have bought like pretty much anything in western Montana. Like, you know, these places that would have been huge generational wealth providers. I'm like so mad at them, you know? So they did this because they wanted to do a dude ranch out of Gold Creek. So they actually operated it, you know, where they would hike people up into the Bob Marshall and things like that. But, you know, they went into the first winter with like 2 pieces of wood on the porch and stuff like that. And like cut wood with horses all year to try to do it. So they ended up, when Plum Creek knocked on their door and they said, hey, would you like to sell it? You know, my grandpa's like, yes, you know, but then they bought they went over to Fairfield and bought a ranch. It's beautiful country, right? But it is the least valuable economic decision you can make. You know what I mean? Like, it was about 1,100 acres, 1,200 acres of irrigated ground, or maybe it was 16. And they raised sheep and pigs and, you know, lost money every year until today. So, yeah. But it's like, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's their experience versus my dad's family, who was like, you know, homesteaded and like, you know, huddling together for warmth and, you know, like multiple generations in Montana. They would just look at that other family like, you guys are. They had a lot of opinions on the way they were doing things. Yeah. But it was but my grandpa, the one on my dad's side, he had to do whatever he could to survive, you know, so he was able, by the time he died, he had about 250 acres or so, and, you know, there was original farm, but he had like 6-7 brothers, and they all kind of went off and established their own thing, but he died of mesothelioma just from doing occasional insulation, you know, in people's houses, but it's kind of interesting. Sometimes you actually have to move around, but the people in Montana just haven't been doing very well. You know, the longer you stay in Montana, the worse it is. You've got to bring money from somewhere else and bring enough so you can get to your last day here.
Yeah, it's an interesting state.
Yeah, it's just we export our children and then we import like retirees, and I mean that's a fine model. It's just not sustainable. Yeah, I suppose you have to get going, huh?
I do. I actually have, being semi-retired, I still have to work, and I've got
5 minutes.
Yeah, according to that clock, 5 minutes.
You're gonna be late for the first time in 40 years?
No.
Oh man. So thanks, Marty.